What's up, guys and gals? It's time for the latest piece of One Piece, chapter 1184, entitled Only Bones Get Left Behind. I wonder whose backstory we're dealing with that one. So, obviously, this chapter is quite a good chapter. We're finally getting Brook's backstory. As far as I'm aware, going down the list, we've covered everybody else's childhood. Other than Jinbei as an actual child, we have literally covered every other Straw Hat backstory otherwise. Jinbei being the most recent member, of course, but only, and we still know Jinbei's pretty much the majority of his story. Therefore, Brook is actually the only enigma, and now between the last chapter and this chapter, we're finally getting the full story. Plus, his childhood, in fact. We start this off, we thought, okay, we're just going to see a part of him in his 20s, like before he became a pirate. But no, we're doing the whole bit. How did Brook come to be who he is? What happened? And 1183 told us that, and this chapter clears this up, that he was brother to the king. It was more of a Luffy, Sabo, Ace situation, or with Tamo in Wano and sort of idea being like big bro Luffy, big bro Ace. It was the idea of a young child looking up to, you know, someone who was, you know, roughly about a decade older or so, and just being like, that's my big bro, you know, or referring to them as big bro. Animes do this a lot. I don't know if that's a translation thing, similar to how you can't really translate Nakama sort of idea correctly. So, I'm curious whether that's just a thing and everyone just accepts that Big Bro kind of works for the majority of things. And it does, but it does leave some level of confusion, because at the end of 1183, we thought Brook was royalty. At least I did. Made sense. He's captain of the guard. He's not the king, but he's second in command. He's second in line for the throne, but his brother's alive, so he's like, yeah, it's fine. And even the way he brings it up in 1183... when the king says, yeah, so wait, you plan to assassinate me so you can take the throne sort of idea? And it's like, okay, we have a Scar Mufasa idea, but obviously not Scar and Mufasa, but you know what I mean? We have that idea. So they heavy-handed it pretty strongly there that, you know, he was in line for the throne, you know, there was an ascension thing there. But here, this chapter does clear it up. And I do prefer it this way. I like it this way because it also makes Princess Shuri's admiration and, you know, childhood love for Brook just seem a little bit more on the nose. For me, I guess, I mean, it is once again stated like by His Majesty last time when we are introduced to Princess Shuri and she's like, she's into Brook and stuff like that. Of course, young girls sometimes obviously, you know, they're like, I want to find a man like my dad or like my uncle and sort of idea, you know, because they treat them, they pay attention to them, they treat them so well. It's always adorable when it happens. I remember being like a teenager on a camping trip with some neighbors and family friends and stuff like that, and someone had brought their little like 5, 6, 7-year-old daughter or whatever like that, and, you know, around the campfire and stuff, and I mean, everyone, you know, little kids, people are trying to have an adult conversation and stuff, so I would play games there. I would pay attention to her and stuff. And I remember around the campfire one day, I was sitting there next to friends of mine who were about a year older than I was, you know, so they, the girls were 17 and it was their cousin and I was, you know, 16, 15, something like that. And she just comes up and says, one day I think I'm going to marry you. And, you know, the girls laughed and said, oh, you know, you got an admirer sort of idea, you know. And it's just like, yeah, so when a child does it, Princess Shuri is doing the same idea, finding, you know, an adult that, you know, is actually giving them the time of day, pays attention to them and stuff like that. And Brook is fulfilling that role here. And even uncle or not, pseudo-uncle in this case, it's still, it happens all the time, you know. And it's very innocent, it's very sweet. And it gives a level of childhood wonder to Princess Shuri as a result, to just be like so happy. You know, she was born in a happy kingdom where music was playing and stuff like that. Because we didn't know. When we got the information from Brook, this is Princess Shuri, I hope to never see you again and all this stuff, there could have been a lot of, like, darkness, like a Robin backstory or something. But no, or a Bonnie situation. But we're seeing that Princess Shuri actually had quite a good childhood. And now in this chapter, at the beginning, we're seeing chapter 1184, she is at 14, and she still had a good childhood so far. You know, she was raised by her mom and dad. Her mom was a beauty. Her dad was, you know, the king, and he was a very good king. He was a nice guy and stuff like that. And Brook, being the adoptive big bro, or little brother of the king in this regard. And she was always attached to Brook. And it's very wholesome. It's very sweet. It's very nice. In this chapter, it's hilarious because since he literally was probably there changing her diapers and stuff like that, she's all into him. And she's like, I love your music. I love hanging out with you. Like, my swordsman skill is amazing. You have to be able to beat me in a fight because suitors are coming for her already at 14 years old. And she's just like, and of course, this is Japan and also the One Piece world. So, once again, but at 14 years old, she already has suitors, right? Grimm's Fairy Tale style. And she's just like, nope, if you can't beat me in a fight and you can't even play an instrument, I'm not interested. Then she goes up to Brook and she says, you know, I'm getting stronger every day, you know, in my swordsmanship, and, you know, and I'm turning into quite a beauty as well. One day my boobs will pop out, you know, they'll look so amazing, and you'll be happy, won't you, Brook, and stuff like that. And he's just like, that's very unladylike for you to say. No. And then he immediately goes, oh, there's a lovely lady. May I see your panties? You know, so it's an immediate, and she's like, would you give that a rest and stuff? Because it's that situation, Seven Deadly Sins style, Meliodas style, where he's a pervert to everyone, and the one woman who wants, it's a Diane and Meliodas situation, 100%. Diane wants Meliodas to be after her in the first few seasons, and is always trying to flaunt and flash him and stuff, and he's just disinterested 100% because he only has eyes for Elizabeth. And in this case, it's the same idea. Brook is stone-faced when it comes to Shuri and will hit on anything else with legs. A goddamn tree stump with legs. As long as he can see their panties, he don't care. He don't judge. He don't judge the trees, alright? Entwives, maybe he found them. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, it's still a really good chapter just based on the fact that we're finally getting this information about Brook. We see his relationship to Shuri. He was a pseudo-uncle or an adoptive uncle in a sense. She was, you know, infatuated with him and stuff from the time she was a little girl. And he treated her, he doted on her like nobody's business. Just at the end of the last chapter, like, you dote on Princess Shuri way too much. You give her way too much leeway, blah, blah, blah. He's just the doting uncle. And it's really nice to see. It's very wholesome. It's very sweet. And then we also get to see Brook's actual childhood backstory where he was a street rat. This is just simply sort of the Aladdin story in that regard. He was the street rat. He didn't have a claim to fame. His songs were terrible, and he lived off junk. And, you know, he stole this curry powder, so he made all this terrible food just to, you know, but he seasoned it with curry powder so everything would taste good. And he would eat this slop. The prince at the time, of course, the later His Majesty the King, would come by and was like, your music, you know, what's up, kid, and stuff like that. He's like, hey, you know, you and me, we got to stick together. You know, you're a street rat like me, big bro, and stuff like that. So they would hang out and all this stuff. He ends up getting captured by some ruffians, a misunderstanding, and of course, that's when it's revealed he's the prince and the captain of the guard at the time, the future queen, Chandelle. She's there, and they're just like, oh, no, absolutely not, blah, 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 like, we're going to rescue him. It's like, Brook, I hear you, you know, because he was going to die. He was at his last legs, and that's where only the bones get left behind sort of idea. They thought he had, like, spice, that kind of idea, but really gunpowder, but really all he stole was curry powder, and that's all he had, but they were misinformed. It was this whole misunderstanding, but the kings and queen, you know, the future king and queen, they were not having any of this, so they take Brook to the palace. He's like, you're a prince, big bro? I'm sorry to hide it from you, little bro, sort of idea. But yeah, you know, you're coming with me, you're going to be okay, blah, blah, blah. So he brings him to the palace, and he's like, absolutely not. We are not, like, Brook is staying here from now on. Give him a room, give him a wing of the palace. He's my little brother. He's not going. It's so sweet. It's so wholesome because he's bandaged up. It's I forget the exact wording. I'll pull up the chapter here. I forget the exact wording, but it was really sweet and stuff like that because he's been treated so kindly. You know, They went fishing together. They tried booze together and stuff. Like they would, they'd fish, they'd capture, and he would sing for the prince. He would sing for him all the time, and he loved his music and stuff like that, right? So, he wakes up and he's just like, I really get it. I'm sorry for, I didn't mean to deceive you. I just really like spending time with you and all this stuff. And he's just like, well, and even the future queen says, the prince runs off all the time and it scares us half to death. We have no idea where he is, but he was just running off to spend time with you, eh? Like, his cute little friend and stuff like that. So, but that's, as I said, when the prince, at the last page of the chapter, it's very wholesome, it's very sweet, and if you slowly read it, and this is my third time kind of going through it, it gets you a little, Oda's good at that, gets you a wee bit teary-eyed, just the way he handles the dialogue and the way he handles the paneling and the scenes, because it's just like, this is where the prince finally says, everyone, here, inform the entire palace, this kid is my favorite musician, get him a room, give him a proper instrument, and arrange for him to attend school, he's my little brother now, and he's going to, a new star is going to be born, I love this kid, and this is the line that gets Brook finally, teary-eyed, as I was saying. It inspires him in the sense of he thought that, obviously the prince, Levian or whatever, he thought that he was just another, down on his luck guy, and they were in the same class. But he just wanted to spend time with him and stuff like that. He's finally realizing the depth of their relationship and stuff like that. And meanwhile, he's spouting to everyone who will listen while he's being taken care of. He goes, I love this kid, and from now on, the palace will be so much more fun. The fun part irrelevant, just the fact that he just said, yeah, give this kid a room, he's staying here with us for now, he's my little brother, get him a proper instrument, get him everything he wants, let him attend school and stuff, I love this kid. And I think that's the first time we can probably, I don't think we're going to go back any further than this, so we're going to ensue from this that Brook probably never knew his parents, or his parents abandoned him, or they died, illness, whatever, poverty, etc., very early on, so he's never had anybody. And he's had to survive on his own, just with a love of music and a happy-go-lucky attitude. And for, even though he was hanging out with his big bro and stuff like that, I don't think Prince Levan even knows how much that meant to him to say, I love this kid, and unashamedly saying it to everyone. He's just saying it like it's common fact. But that's probably the first time in Brook's life he's heard someone not only treat him well, but also be like, oh, I love this boy. This is my little brother. I love him. Like it's any other Tuesday. And for Brook, that's the first time in his life he's heard that. So it's very, when you stop and think about it, it is heart-wrenching in a very positive, I'm not crying, you're crying, motherfucker, sort of way. So I really enjoy that. I think that this chapter did a lot of things right. It was very wholesome. It was very sweet. And I like to see that Brook had not the most tragic backstory in the world. Yes, later in life, he's also lived for 80 years, right? So he's had a very long life to have tragedy like what happened to his crew. But it's nice to see that it wasn't doom and gloom his entire life. It started out pretty shitty, being a street rat, but then he had, from the time he was 8-9 years old up until his mid-20s, he lived a wonderful life. He had a great life as captain of the guard, surrounded by people who loved him, and a country that inspired him and stuff, and he could sing his music and all this stuff. So it adds depths of layer to the One Piece world, that it's like, okay, things are dark, and they don't always have to be dark to darker to even darkest every single time we get a backstory about a character. Some characters can have bad moments happen in life. They happen. I've had terrible things happen to me as well. But it doesn't take away from the good years, So it's nice to see that sort of, that wholesome three-dimensional backstory writing from Oda, that Brook had relatively a pretty good life for the most part from what we've seen so far. From the time he was born until the current timeline, he's had tragedy in his life, but so far it's not just all doom and gloom. Robin is all doom and gloom up until the Straw Hats. It was all doom and gloom. There was very little happy moments in Robin's life, other than, a couple short years on O'Hara. The most part of her life was just tragedy. Jinbei had tragic moments, but Jinbei lived, from what we understand, a pretty good life, Usopp as well, like quite simple. Zoro had tragedy, but for the most part has lived a good life. These things don't always have to be, we don't need to always write the most heinous, tragic, Bonnie Kuma level story every single time to make it wholesome, to make it sweet, and to still be a little bit of a gut-wrencher, a little bit of a heart-wrenching situation. So, anyway, I've babbled on about that long enough. Chapter 1184 was a very good chapter, is my point. I'm looking forward to continuing this, because obviously we know that Princess Shuri eventually, last time I saw her, she was being sent off to marry Joa. So I assume this happens roughly when she turns 16, 17, something like that. In a couple years, we'll probably get a short time skip within the backstory saying, and then a few years later, this happened for whatever reason. He became a pirate. The island of Vesperia went down and stuff like that. We're probably going to find out all that information. So, but that being said, what did you guys think? Let me know down in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as always. And we'll see all you wonderful people back here next time for the next piece of One Piece. I believe it's break week next week. So we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for 1185. Looking forward to it. Hope you guys are as well. Sayonara.